What's up? This is Richie from the Where We Wild YouTube channel, and today I got a 13 fishing Concept C2. Gonna take it all apart, tune it up, get it running nice and smooth, so if you're at home trying to take yours apart, you can follow along and hopefully it'll help you out. Let's get into it, man. All right, so let's get started here. First and foremost, we gotta get this handle off. Start with this screw out here. It's a little small. You can go with a Phillips head or a flat head. I'm gonna go with a flat head. Just seems like they're a little more gentle on these screws, where a Phillips head can strip it out sometimes. I need some little baby tweezers here. There we go. We got a 10 millimeter here. Yes, 10 millimeter. Try counterclockwise to the right. Nope, that tightens it. Let's go to the left. So it's counterclockwise on this reel. That's different. Different than I'm used to. I'm keeping pressure on the handle, pushing down as I take this nut off. Stay pressure on the drag star. Slowly pull up on the handle here. Very slow. All right, we got a little bit of a washer on the back of it. Be mindful of that. And I'm just working my way down here, keeping everything in order. Yeah, that's very spring loaded. So just keep your hand down there. A lot of pressure. Underneath this thing, what do we got here? All right, so little pin and spring. Find that on the Shimano reels a lot. And then that grabs all those little grooves and rivets or whatever you want to call them on this piece. And that's what makes it click. So definitely don't want to lose that. Probably can't even see it on camera, it's so small. Just gonna give this a quick little wipe off here. Next up, you got a spring. You got a little bit of a nut here. It's on pretty darn tight. Let's see, is that going to be lefty loosey or righty tighty? Alright, that's clockwise to the right. That thing was on there pretty tight, dude. Alright, this looks a little familiar to me. Got your two little spring tension washers, which are usually in the back-to-back position, like back-to-back parentheses, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of a bend, adds a little spring action to them, so you just want to keep them opposite each other. Next up, I guess let's take this spool out here. A little open and closed door on the side. Let's get the spool out. I'm just going to take the line off it. I probably should have, but I can do that later. Alright, what do we got here? Alright, looks like we got our first bearing down in here. See if we can take that out. There's a little bit of a spring clip in there, so you just want to be careful. It's a little hard to show you because this door is in the way, but I'm just gonna dig my tweezers down in there and just pull up, keeping my finger over it so it doesn't go flying on you. And we're just going to take our little bearing remover tool. See if we can pull this thing out real fast, check it. There we go. Get that out of there. Give it a little wipe off. Little Lucas Real Oil here. I'll link it in the video description along with everything else I'm using, the mat, the tools, grease, oil. That way if you need to pick something up for yourself, you can grab it. Feels pretty good. A little drink. Yep. Just dumped half of my oil. Small bearing. Just one or two little more drops. Alright, that feels pretty good. Might give a tiny little wipe out this little area here. Just take any crap out. Yeah, see that little bit there? No need for that to be in there, sir. Now, this reel was given to me by a friend of mine. Shout out to you, buddy. You know who you are. And so I've never fished with it, but I hear they're pretty cool. Very light. It's going to need a little bit of cleanup, but I'll spare you that and just skip ahead if I have to do much of that. Take my bearing tester, keep that pushed down, and I'm just going to slip in this little clip again, which is going to be hard for you to see, but I'm just starting on one side and then just using my fingernail to push down on it and get it to click into place just like that. Then you just want to make sure it's all sat in there nice, which it is. Alright, that bearing's done. Just gonna do a little bit of cleanup here, but I'll jump cut and jump ahead for you. Alright, as you can tell by my little Q-tip collection here and the toothpick, I did a little cleanup work on this. That's good for now. Not so bad, but just your usual stuff. So let's keep going here. Let's take this tension knob off. To the right or to the left? To the left. Keeping some pressure on it just in case there's a spring. Is this thing gonna come off or? Oh, so you gotta pull it off already. I might just leave that alone for now. I want to see what it looks like on the other side. Let's see what's going on inside this thing first, huh? So it looks like we got 2 screws on the outside, 2 screws on the back side. Switch to a little bit of a smaller attachment here. Let's see what goes on here. Start with this one on the outside. Just using a pretty small flathead. Just make sure you get a nice lockup. And I'm just going to place them in the order I found them. So outside, top left, outside, I'm sorry, top right, top left, back side here, on the top. And these are a little different. These I'm gonna have to use a Phillips head for. Does this one fit? Let's see. Well, once you get it done. All right. Ooh, there's a little bit of a bushing on that screw. There's another one on this side. So let's remember that. Just fits in there like so. I'm just going to keep it attached to that so I remember it later. Same deal on this side, looks like. And it's pretty easy to tell how they fit in there because they're just molded right on, exact shape. I don't know if you can see that, but pretty easy to tell. Just keep that on there for later. All right, let's see what we got. Slowly pull off the side plate. One of the springs fell off already. A little washer. Let's take these springs off right now. Where did that little washer go? I'd imagine. Ooh, jeez. Alright, so that was a little bearing in here. Kind of messy inside. Gonna need a little bit of cleanup going on in here. Gross. Not quite sure where that washer fell out of. That out of there? Yeah. Probably not like that. Alright, is that keyed? No. Alright, let me see if I can get this bearing out this way. Another little spring clip. It's a little gnarly in there, dude. Little bit of a spring clip. Let me see if that lets me pull this bearing out. Yep. Alright, so a little baby bearing on the inside there. Let's give that a wipe. A lot of small bearings so far. Really small. No washer on them. Wow, that is a small bearing. Jeez. That's nuts. Just wiping any grease off it. Speaking of, get inside there. Wipe out anything that's gnarly. Alright, let's oil up this little baby here. Jeez, how tiny is that thing? Alright, that ain't the best bearing in the world. Let's throw that back in. Make sure it sits down for you all the way flush. And then we got our little spring clip. Oops, look at that. I almost made a really big mistake. All I did was tap this thing, and that little pin kind of fell out. Wow, that's just ridiculous how small that is. That's even smaller than the Shimano one. Oof, I just launched it. Wow, this is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. This thing right here, and that star drag, do not even look at it funny. Now I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get this thing back in. Oh boy. Jeez, this thing is ridiculous. I'm gonna lose this thing. This thing hits the floor, dude, and it is game over. And that's the second time that's jumped on me. See, it's these little things that you don't account for. That's what slows you down. Tiny little mistakes. Got it. Oh my God. That is just gross. Alright, let's just keep an eye on that, shall we? Jeez. Try not to bump that again. Alright, where was I? Let's get this little spring clip in. Just have patience. There we go. I got it now. Alright, so that's all out of the way. Let's move on here. Main gear, just gonna slowly pull off. See what's going on here. Guess we'll take the pinion gear out too. Oh. Fell right through. Alright, pinion gear and yoke. Let's wipe that off. It's pretty gnarly. That. Alright. Let's see what's going on here in the main gear drag system area. Underneath we got anything going on here. Alright. Got a little bit of a drag washer. And you got a little kind of sprocket. Just gonna clean everything off. What else we got going on in here? Oof. Jeez. Alright. My God. What is happening? This thing's got a lot of junk on it. Alright, so I'm just going to build out this drag system this way. A little piece there. First drag washer. Looks like you got a carbon fiber-ish drag washer. You got a little eared, kind of keyed washer. And those fit in the grooves inside there. And you got another drag washer. Probably could upgrade these to a thicker carbon fiber if you want. I don't even know if those are carbon fiber. It's like a mix between felt and carbon fiber. Another metal washer. Covered in nonsensical. Another washer. Oops. These are pretty dry, actually. Anything else in there? No. Alright, let's give that a nice little wipe out. A lot of junk. And there was no grease, by the way, on the main gear. It's pretty dry. on the outside of the teeth where there should be grease anyway, which is interesting, man. All right, let's hook these drag washers up real fast with some Cow's Universal Real and Star Drag grease. Just gonna put a little coating, nice clean coating on them of this sticky drag grease. Don't want to overdo it, but just a nice clean coating. Soak it up like a sponge. And lay that right in there. And then you can just throw in your first metal piece, get it to sit. A little more here. If you take too much, you can share it with your last one. Or wipe it off on a paper towel if you like. And then you have this little ear washer here. You just want to make sure that little X shape lines up, sits in there nice. Last drag washer. Took a little too much, so just wiping it off on a paper towel. Alright, lay that bad boy in there. And then you got your final piece that just sits on top like that. Alright, so that's it for the old drag grease. Moving on. Now, this looks pretty clean actually, not so bad. Where is the main bearing? Usually I'm used to seeing a bearing right there unless it's hidden. That's interesting stuff. So I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a wipe. Not so bad. Now there's probably either a bushing or a bearing underneath here that we could probably take a look at. Feels pretty good. I'm not going to mess with any of this stuff, but we can check out if there's a bearing down in here. Let's see. Pull slowly up on that, and there is a little bearing under there. How about that? Just give this a little wipe off. A little grease snuck under there. Lay that off to the side. Man, this thing's making me really nervous up here. I really don't want to lose that. Alright, can we get this little baby bearing out of here? Sure. Little wipe out in there. This bearing was oiled pretty nicely, but it's always good to check them out. Fresh oil. Nice little drink. Fire that right back in there. Then we can put this piece back on. Just like that. Let's get these screws back in. I might need a little grease for that. A little pinwheel grease, just a tiny little splash of it, just to help it stick. Not tightening it all the way yet. Just want to make sure they're both lined up before I do that. All right. Tight is tight. Don't want to go crazy on it. Cool. Feels pretty good. All right, well, all we gotta do now is just grease up our gears, throw this thing back together. Where's my paintbrush? Take a little bit of grease. Now, this had a pretty good amount on it, but just to show you, maybe a little bit right here where that slides back and forth, a little on the spring, here and there. You can hit these gears a little bit if you want, but they're plastic. They don't really need too much, but if you want, you can just put a tiny little splash and just run it right in between them. So it catches both at once. That's it. There's no need to go crazy on them. That's good. Just a little love. And we got our pinion gear up here, and we just want to slap a little something on these teeth. Some fresh, clean grease. Nothing crazy though. It's going to share it with the main gear. It's good. You can throw a little bit of, oops, I'll drop that. A little bit of love on this yoke, just a little bit. And we got to hit our main gear. And for that, what I like to do is I just like to tap along the outside of the gear, and then just take my finger and smash it into the teeth. You don't have to cover every inch of this thing, just 60%, 50-60%. You don't want too much, because then it just builds up around the pinion gear and adds unnecessary weight and gunk to your reel. So just keep it light. And clean, light and clean. All right, I'm happy with that. Just gonna give a little bit of fresh wipe to this one-way bearing in here. It's friction driven, so you don't really need any oil or grease on that. Just keep that nice and clean. Rest of this little area here, that looks good. All right, man, let's put this thing back together. Now, you know what? I could put a tiny little bit of, just a tiny bit of drag grease on this little one here. Just a tiny, tiny little something, something. All right, so let's put this thing back together. Got this little piece here. It's kind of keyed. Let that drop down. And you want those points aiming here, so that way when this contraption goes back and forth, it can catch that. Just like that. Can you see how it catches? And then throws it back. If that's backwards, it's not going to fly, man. So just make sure it's pointed that way. And you got your little washer here. And then we're going to sit in our pinning gear. Now, I'm a little tripped out here, by the way, that there's no, seems like there's no bearing where Shimano's and Daiwa and stuff, they always have a bearing right there to support the pinning gear, and I don't see one. So that's a little weird to me, but it's just how it's made, this thing. Just grab our pinning gear and our yoke. Actually, put a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of grease on these posts here. And these little ramps. It's cool. Sit that down in there. Then we can put on our main gear. Kind of just support all those washers and stuff. Let that sit in there first, I guess. And throw everything else back in. Make sure your little four-sided ear washer is lined up so everything can sit in there flush, and we're good to go. All right, now we got, where is that actually? Now usually there's a little key here with Shimano reels, but this one doesn't. It does have one side that's a little different than the other. I think this side actually points up, which is interesting. I'm fairly certain that this little washer that fell off would go right on top of it, just like that. And then we're gonna close up our door. But before we do that, we just gotta put these little springs back on. Keep those in place. And then let's lock her up, man. Just take a minute, take a breath. What do we do here? We got to all the bearings in there, oiled everything up. We hooked the whole drag up. We added grease onto the main gear, the pinning gear, the yoke, all the little inner workings there. Everything is looking good. Springs are back on. Let's fire this case back on. There we go. All right, got it. Okay. Took a tiny little bit of force to get that door on. More than I'm used to. Let's get these screws back in. I'm actually gonna need, you know what? I'll go with the back ones first since I got that attachment on. Remember, you want to sit that little black spacer or bushing or whatever it is back in there. And you can tell how it matches up with it. Tight as tight. Just kind of sits in there. Matches that little U shape down in there. I'm actually just going to keep a little bit of pressure on it as I tighten that up so it doesn't move. Cool. And I got the other one, same deal. Little black piece just kind of matches up. with the shape of the reel. This thing's a little slippery. And you can just see how it just sits in there. It's sick, man. I've never seen that before. All right, then we got two more, and I'm gonna have to go back to my little flathead for the front here. Just make sure they go in nice and straight. My hands are slippery, boy. Tight is tight, don't want to strip them. But you do want them in there nice and snug. Now, let's get this handle back on. We'll start with our two little spring tension washers. Remember, they're sitting back to back from each other, just to give you a little bit of spring effect. So there's that little bit of bend. And back to back, just like that. Put those on. We got our little nut here. Is that to the left or right? Left, counterclockwise. You don't have to tighten that down ridiculously. Just, you know, if you want, you can throw the spool back in here actually and use it to your advantage. Speaking of this little door hinge here, I'm just going to put the tiniest little bit of grease right there. That's it. Not too much though. And honestly, I think there might be a little bit of a bearing in this worm gear here. And I'm not going to take it all apart, but I am just going to drop a little bit of oil right on this little clip back here and let it work its way in. And then we're going to hit the worm gear as well. Let's get the spool in there. Got to make sure this line goes in with it. Should have taped up the spool. Sometimes just taping up that extra line helps you. Drop that spool in there. All right, let's close that up. Make sure that locks down nice. And what I was going to say is, if you have the spool in, you can grab it, and that way you can tighten that up a little bit, and you have a little something to hold on to here. All right, now we got our spring. That in place. Now we got this piece you got to be real careful with, because you got that tiny little piece on there. You don't want that to go flying. So what we're going to do is just going to keep our finger over it, add a little pressure, push this thing all the way down, just like that. Then we're going to add that little washer that was on there. Then our handle, just keeping good pressure. And then it kind of turns into a little balancing act here, where you need to just kind of grab it like a four-seam fastball, if you know what I'm saying. Ooh man, this is dangerous, I'm slippery. And then we're just going to get this nut on, which I think is tightened clockwise. Just kind of keeping it balanced. Get our 10mm and tighten it up just a little bit, just so it doesn't go flying. Come on. Just a little bit. Now I just want to make sure this drag's working. That tape is on there. Yeah, that drag ain't moving. Nice. Back off it just a little bit though. It's tape. Should have ripped the line off it. Nice. Alright, now all we got to do is throw our little piece here back on, this little piece that stops it. Now this nut is going to have to be in the perfect position so that this piece, which fits perfectly around it, can line up with this screw hole. And sometimes you have to tighten it more or loosen it. You just have to make sure it's perfectly tightened or loosened. It's darn close. Just gonna back off just a tiny bit. And now that screw hole is perfectly lined up. Alright, let's get this little baby back in. It's nice with the Phillips head because you can grab a little bit of grease like before and it'll just stick it right on there for you. Oop. You really need some patience to work on these things, man, I tell you. They can get on your nerves really fast. I got you now. All right, tight is tight. Now, the last thing I want to do here is I just want to drop a little bit of oil into this worm gear. Ooh, what is that? Just a little nonsense in there. But just a little bit into this worm gear on one side. Move it over. The other side. And we're just going to slowly work it in. You don't want to go nuts because you're just going to shoot oil all over the place. You're hearing this tape for sure. Wow, that feels pretty sick, man. Wow. This thing feels pretty nuts. Got the... Wow. This tension knob that clicks is pretty sensitive. Drag's clicking, tension knob's clicking, drag's definitely working. Button's working good. Yeah, dude. Now we're talking. Sounds ridiculous because of this tape. But taking it off ain't gonna be much better. A little quieter. But it's just that line. Man, this thing feels good. Wow, feels awesome, man. You just want to take it over to the couch, maybe mess around with it for a little while, work in all that fresh oil and grease, and it's just gonna get smoother and smoother and smoother. Everything we did is just gonna work its way in. So, man, feels really, really good. Really good. I'm happy with that. You know what? One little final touch here I forgot about. I just want to put a little bit of oil right where these knobs meet the handle here. That's usually what I like to do for a little final touch. And you know what? I may throw a Gomexus handle on this thing. I think it might look cool. So that's pretty much it, dude. not too bad. 13th Fishing Concept C2. I'll link the reel schematic in the video description along with all the tools and stuff I use here. So if you run into trouble, you can check that schematic out. It'll show you exactly where every little part goes. And that's good to have, man, especially if you've never worked on these things before. They're usually very similar, all these casting reels. They're very, very similar from brand to brand. They each have their little quirks and stuff like that that you gotta kind of get used to. So when you're working on a new brand for the first time, you know, you might run into trouble. So that schematic will be linked in the video description once again with all the other stuff here, oil, grease, everything I'm using, Matt. And yeah, dude. I hope it helps you out. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're into this sort of thing, don't forget to hit subscribe. We put a new video out every single week. And definitely check out the rest of the channel. We got a lot of reel maintenance videos, a lot of fishing content, and I hope you enjoy those videos as well. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Later. If you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to check out the rest of the Where We Wild YouTube channel, where we post a brand new video every week. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever we post a new adventure. Thanks for watching.
See ya.